Hey OK crew, and welcome back to another yoga class. Today's class is going to be a back to the basics. We're going to be running through our Sun Salutation A, our Sun Salutation B, and a classic balance pose. Really just bringing everything back to the fundamentals, making sure that we are confident in the basic movements as we progress to harder, more challenging, and advanced poses. So without further ado, let's get started with today's class. We can all meet in Shavasana. So in Shavasana, we're lying on our back. Your arms are by your sides, palms facing up. You can leave your eyes open or let them close. Whatever is most comfortable for you and whatever allows you to relax. And so Shavasana, at the beginning of class, gives us the opportunity to do a quick body scan, head to toe, to see where the body's at, to see if it's sore and tired, and so maybe we need to hold back a little bit in class, maybe not push ourselves quite as hard or push ourselves quite as far, but rather just listening to the body and keeping it safe and preventing it from getting injured. Or maybe we're really energetic today, we have lots of extra energy, and so we can push ourselves a little bit further. You can try that next step, the next advanced option, because you do have that energy and the body's feeling good. And so that is what Shavasana is for. It's meant to tune inwards to see how you're doing right now before class starts. So just take a few more breaths here. Just monitoring how you're doing. Noticing how the body feels right now so that you can compare it to the way you feel at the end of class as well. And then begin to wiggle your toes and fingers. Maybe rotate the wrists and ankles. And nod your head side to side to begin to warm up the neck. And then draw your knees up into a reverse tabletop position. And begin to slowly draw your knees down to the right side, but don't let them touch the ground. Just hovering a little bit over the ground here. Inhale back to center. Exhale to the left side. Inhale back to center. And over to the right. So this is a way to warm up the spine while also engaging the core. Inhale back to center, over to the left. So keep your low back rooted into the ground when you come back to center. So the low back is plugged into the ground. You're not lifting up and arching through the low back. Exhale over to the other side. Inhale back to center. Exhale to the left. Inhale back to center. Lower your feet to the ground. Turn onto your side and lift all the way up into a seated position. You can take any comfortable cross-legged seated position. Just make sure you're sitting up nice and tall on your sits bones. Spine is nice and long here. Draw your left hand down beside you. Inhale the right hand up overhead. Begin to side bend over. So really opening up the right side of the body. Keeping the chest nice and open here. And not rounding forwards. Inhale back to center and switch. So in these seated lateral side bends, we want to make sure that we're staying evenly on both sits bones, and so that you're not popping up on one hip, because that will reduce the stretch. So even if you're up here and you're getting a good stretch, then that's where your body needs to be at. So don't feel like you need to force yourself all the way down just to get your arm on the ground. That's where the ego starts to come in. Inhale back to center, exhale the other way. And so it's trying to find that fine line between, oh, I can do this, I will prove that I can do this, and potentially putting yourself in danger of hurting your muscles because they're not ready for that right now. Inhale back to center, exhale the other way. So it's that fine line of, should I push myself and not get the benefit versus reining it in a little bit, pushing yourself enough that you're able to challenge yourself and get better, but then also keeping your body safe and knowing what it needs right now. So inhale back to center, exhale over. So while Shavasana is really where we come in and see where the body's at, we want to continue on doing that all class. Noticing how the body feels in different poses, noticing if you can go further or deeper, or if you need to back out a little bit. Inhale back to center, exhale the other way. So don't just leave that mindfulness in Shavasana, but carry through the whole practice. It is amazing how much you can learn about your body when you're being mindful the whole time. So that's one of the great things about yoga, is you really get to learn a lot about your body and what it likes and what it doesn't like, and when you can push it and when you should back off a little bit. Inhale back to center. We'll all make our way into a tabletop position. In tabletop, your shoulders are stacked over your wrists, your hips over top of your knees. We'll go through a few rounds of cat-cow to warm up the spine. So we've brought the spine through lateral flexion and extension, and so now we're going to bring it through just like regular flexion and extension. On an inhale, begin to tilt the tailbone up towards the ceiling. The belly dips down low, chest opens, and your head comes up last into cow pose. And then on an exhale, begin to round the tailbone under, pushing through your shoulder blades to protract your scapula, and the head comes down last into cat pose. Inhale to come through cow. Exhale as you come through cat. Inhale through cow, again following your own pattern of breathing and noticing anywhere that might feel a little sticky for you. So in my cat position, I'm really sticky through my low back. I don't really get much curving, so that's what I'm really working on. And so you can even kind of bounce through those areas, maybe spending a little bit more time, or really going slow, slow, slow through the areas that you notice are sticky for you. We'll go through our cat-cow one more time. And then exhaling through cat pose. Come back into your tabletop position, tuck your toes under, and bring your hips up and back into our first downward facing dog. In our first downward facing dog, this is a great time to pedal up the feet, maybe sway the hips side to side. And remember, we're trying to get our tailbone up towards the ceiling, or as I've heard Owen say a few times, and I really do like it, is nose to toes is what we're aiming for here. And so notice if maybe you're able to get your tailbone up if you step your feet out about max width apart. Maybe taking that wider stance allows your back to curve up rather than rounding under. Or maybe if your head is popping out past your shoulders, try taking a wider stance with your hands and maybe see if that allows you to bring your chest closer to the top of your thighs. So just play around here. Keep your fingers nice and wide. Your elbow pits are pointing forwards. Really trying to push through the shoulder blades, so make sure that your chest isn't dumping in. We'll hold this for 2 more breaths. On your next inhale, come up onto your toes, bend your knees, look between your hands, and step or walk to the front of your mat into a forward fold. Keep your head nice and heavy here. Your hands can reach for opposite elbows, and you can sway side to side if that feels good. Really try to release the low back and the hamstrings. And again, bend your knees as much as you need to so that your belly can touch the tops of your thighs to protect your low back. So if you're standing like this right now, that's going to put a lot of tension on your low back. So it's better for you to bend your knees and rest your tummy on your thighs. Still trying to straighten the back of your legs, but just maintaining that belly to thigh contact the whole time. On an inhale, place your hands on your shins or just above your knees to push up into flat back. In flat back, we want the spine nice and long, including the neck, and the chest is open. So we're not rounding through the shoulders here and closing the chest, we're really opening it up here. Again, you can keep a small bend in your legs if that helps keep the low back straight rather than, again, rounding under. Especially at the beginning of the class, you might need more of a bend in your legs. Exhale to forward fold. And on strong legs, sweep your arms up overhead. Come to stand, palms touch, gaze follows. Exhale, palms to heart center. We'll come into a half sun salutation A, which will begin to warm up the body. Inhale, sweep your arms up overhead, palms touch, gaze follows. Exhale, hinge at the hips into your forward fold. Inhale to flat back. Exhale to forward fold. Inhale, sweep your arms up overhead, palms touch, gaze follows. Exhale, palms to heart center. Now we'll come through a full sun salutation A. Inhale, sweep your arms overhead. Exhale to forward fold. Inhale to your flat back. Keep that chest open and the spine long. Exhale to forward fold. This time, plant your palms. Step your feet back into your high plank, high push-up position. You have the option to come down onto your knees or stay in the high plank. Shift your weight forward into your hands. Squeeze your elbows into your ribs as you lower down, chest first and then hips. Extend your feet out long here and hands come underneath your shoulders. We'll come into baby cobra first. On an inhale, without putting any weight into your hands, begin to peel your chest away from the mat. So this is all coming from the muscles in your back. So you're just peeling up a little bit, and to really make sure that you're not cheating and putting weight into your hands, lift your hands away from the mat, drawing your shoulders away from your ears. Exhale all the way down. And then this time we'll come into full cobra. So on an inhale, push the weight into your hands, peeling your chest away from the mat. And again, gauging just how far you're able to come up into your back bend. So you might be lower down to the ground, or if your back mobility is good, you can try extending your hands all the way. Just make sure that your chest is open here and you're not rounding or caving in. Really protecting the low back and the chest by staying open. Exhale all the way down. Push up through your tabletop, tuck your toes, and send your hips up and back into downward facing dog. So the reason that we do Sun Salutation A in basically all of our classes is it's one of the best ways to warm up all the major muscle groups in the body. So we're warming them up and we're stretching them. And so that's why we like to do it, because it's targeting all the areas that we're going to be working on throughout the rest of class. On an inhale, come up onto your toes, bend your knees, look between your hands, and either walk or step to the front of your mat into forward fold. With your hands on your shins or just above your knees, push up into flat back. Exhale to forward fold. And on strong legs, sweep your arms up overhead, palms touch, knees follows. Exhale, palms to heart center. We'll do that one more time, a little bit quicker this time. Inhale, sweep your arms up overhead. Exhale to forward fold. Inhale to flat back. Exhale, forward fold. Plant your palms and step your left foot back, followed by your right into a high plank, high push-up. Fingers are spread nice and wide. Elbow pits pointing forward with your elbows pointing back. Option to come down onto your knees or shift the weight into your hands. Squeeze your elbows into your ribs as you lower down through your push-up, chest first and then hips. Extend your legs out long, and then you can either come up into cobra with your hands underneath your shoulders, or to come into upward facing dog, draw your hands down by your ribs, click all 10 toenails into the floor, and lift up everything except for your hands and the tops of your feet away from the mat into upward facing dog. Again, make sure that your chest is wide open and not rounding in. Tuck your toes, send your hips up and back into downward facing dog. Take a few breaths here and any movements that you need to. Fingertips are spread nice and wide. Head is relaxed, jaw is unclenched, letting the breath flow easily. On your next inhale, come up onto your toes, bend your knees, look between your hands, and walk or step to the top of your mat into a forward fold. Inhale to lift up to flat back. Exhale to forward fold. Inhale, draw your fingertips up towards the ceiling, come to stand. Palms together down at heart center. We'll now come into Sun Salutation B, which will incorporate our Warrior One pose. Inhale, sweep your arms up overhead. Exhale, hinge at the hips into forward fold. Come up to your flat back. Exhale to forward fold. Plant your palms, step your right foot back, followed by your left into a high plank, high push-up. Option to lower down to your knees or shift the weight forward into your hands. Squeeze your elbows in by your sides as you lower down through your push-up, chest first and then hips. Extend your feet out long. Inhale to cobra or upward facing dog. Exhale, send your hips up and back into downward facing dog. Inhale, draw your right foot up behind you and step it between your hands. If you get stuck halfway, just use your right hand to move it up to the front of your mat. Your back foot comes down at a 45-degree angle. Sweep your arms up overhead. We're looking for a heel-to-heel alignment. Your hips and your shoulders are squared off to the front of the room. Your arms come up overhead. Your knee tracks over your baby toe, so making sure that it's not caving inwards here. Your arms are up long. Just make sure you're not shrugging your shoulders up towards your ears, but your shoulders are still relaxed. Exhale, draw your hands back down to the mat. Right foot steps back to meet left. Come down to your knees or stay up in your high plank, high push-up. Shift the weight into your hands. Lower down through your push-up. Inhale through cobra or upward facing dog. Exhale to your downward facing dog. This time, your left foot comes up behind you and step it between your hands. Your right foot plants at a 45-degree angle. Inhale, sweep your arms up overhead. This is warrior one. Hips and shoulders squared off to the front of the room. Check in with your knee, make sure that it's tracking over the baby toe side of your foot. And there's equal weight in both of your feet, as if you're trying to rip them out apart from the middle. Exhale to lower your hands, and your left foot steps back to meet your right. Option to lower down through to your knees, or come through push-up. Extend your legs out long. Inhale to cobra or upward facing dog. Exhale, push your hips up and back into downward facing dog. We'll hold this for 5 breaths. Again, using your downward facing dog as an opportunity to come back to your breath, to check in with how your body's doing. You always have the option to come into child's pose as well. You lower down onto your knees, taking hips width apart. Your bum draws down towards your feet. Arms extended long, and your head would rest on the mat. So that option is available for you right now. Or you can take any other resting position that feels good for you. Inhale, come to your toes. Bend your knees, look between your hands, and step to the top of your mat into a forward fold. Inhale to flat back. Exhale to forward fold. Inhale, sweep your arms overhead, but send your hips down into chair pose. In chair pose, the weight is primarily in your heels and the balls of your feet so that you're able to lift your toes. And make sure that you can see your toes past your knees. Your arms are directly up overhead, or you can have them palms at heart center, or extended directly out in front of you. Inhale, come to stand. Exhale, palms down at heart center. Inhale, sweep your arms up overhead. Exhale, forward folds. Inhale to flat back. Exhale to forward fold. Palms come down to the mat. Step your right foot back, followed by your left into high plank, high push-up. Option to come down to your knees or stay up on your toes. Lean the weight into your hands. Squeeze your elbows in by your ribs as you lower down, chest first and then hips. Extend your feet out long. Inhale to the back bend of your choice, cobra or upward facing dog. Keep your chest open. Exhale, push your hips up and back to downward facing dog. Inhale, sweep your right foot up behind you. Exhale, step it between your hands. Your left foot, so your back foot plants at a 45-degree angle. Your arms sweep up overhead into warrior one. Your hips and shoulders are squared off to the front of the room. Exhale, plant your palms. Right foot steps back to meet left. In high plank, high push-up. You can lower down to your knees or shift the weight over into your hands, lowering down, chest first and then your hips. Extend your feet out long. Inhale to the back bend of your choice. Exhale, push your hips up and back into downward facing dog. Inhale to sweep your left foot up behind you. Exhale to step it through between your hands. Your right foot, so your back foot plants at a 45-degree angle. On an inhale, sweep your arms up overhead into warrior one. Again, there's equal weight in both feet. Both legs are very active. We're not favoring one over the other. And we're trying to rip the mat apart from the middle. Exhale, lower your hands down to the mat. Left foot steps back to meet right. Come down to your knees or shift the weight into your hands and lower down through your push-up. Inhale to cobra or upward facing dog. Exhale to downward facing dog. And we'll hold for 5 breaths. So let's check in with our downward facing dog. Take a look at your fingers. Make sure they're nice and spread far apart. Index fingers are pointing forward. We're trying to wrap our triceps under us as if we're trying to hide our armpits from our neighbors. So the elbow pits are pointing more forwards rather than coming out like this. So we're trying to wrap under. We're trying to send our hips up towards the ceiling, so our tailbone curving up rather than rounding under. So if that means you need to bend your knees a lot, then bend your knees a lot. That's more of a benefit than rounding. Take one more deep inhale and exhale. Then come up onto your toes. Bend your knees, look between your hands, and step to the front of the mat into a forward fold. Inhale, push up to flat back. Keep the chest open, spine nice and long. Exhale, back to forward fold. Begin to sink the hips down and back as your arms come up overhead into chair pose. Make sure you can see your toes. Inhale, come to stand, palms touch, arms come down by your sides. So we'll come into the balance portion of today's class. You can stay at the top of your mat, I will come to the middle. And we'll come into tree pose. So tree pose is a very classic balance pose in yoga, but it's really good. It's pretty basic, but it does really challenge your balance. And there's so many progressions that you can make to make it more challenging, even if your balance is awesome. So we'll start in Tadasana or mountain pose. Your feet can be together, heels slightly apart, or you can take hips width apart, whatever is most comfortable for you and where your balance feels at its best. Your toes are spread nice and wide, so pick up your toes, spread them nice and wide, and then click them down into the mat. Noticing how your balance feels right now, how these small muscles in your feet, ankles, and in your calves are at work as you sway side to side. You can really feel this if you close your eyes. You can just notice the little minute movements that you make as these muscles, these stabilizing muscles, keep you upright. So if your eyes are closed, you can open them up again. Begin to shift the weight into your right foot as you peel the heel of your left foot away from the mat, opening up the knee to the side wall, and then place the bottom of your left foot either on your ankle, your shin, or the upper thigh of your standing leg. Whatever option you choose, just make sure that you're able to keep trying to open up your hips here to keep your hips squared off to the front of the room. Your hands can be hands on hips, heart center, or up overhead. Again, choosing what is challenging for you, but doable. And then try to find an area on the wall or the ground that you're able to focus on to help you maintain balance. If this is feeling relatively easy for you, there's a few options. You can begin to move your arms around to make it a little bit more dynamic and making your stabilizing muscles work a little bit harder. Or what's very challenging, a lot more challenging than it sounds, is to close your eyes. And this suddenly makes a relatively easy position so much harder. So I do encourage you, whatever stage you're at, even if your foot is on your ankle, so if you're left foot and then on your right ankle, try closing your eyes, because you might be in between phases or stages, and by closing your eyes or maybe adding some movement with your arms could make it that one step harder for you. So no matter what spot on your leg that you're at, you can always try adding the movement of your arms or closing your eyes. Begin to close your left knee off to the front of the room. Kick your leg out long and then lower it down to the ground. You can give your legs a little bit of a shake and then shift all the way into your left leg. Your right foot, peel the heel away from the mat and then open up your knee to the side wall. Again, choose whatever variation is best for you, and that will give you the best challenge, while also allowing you to open up your hips here. So you will probably feel a bit of a stretch in your hip depending on how tight you are. I'm feeling one right now because I'm a little tight today. But keep your hips squared off so you're not going all cockeyed, nice and square. And then choose whatever arm variation you want. Practice moving around. Or maybe notice how one side the balance feels a little bit easier. And so maybe you do want to try putting your foot in a new position, so maybe higher up on your leg, or maybe now you want to try moving your arms around or closing your eyes. Because oftentimes one side does feel different than the other. Notice how maybe your dominant side feels different from your non-dominant side. So again, yoga is all about learning more about your body and being really intentional about learning about your body. So taking these times where we're not flowing and moving out of positions really quickly, take these times that are slower to really cue inwards and notice any differences. What feels good, what doesn't feel good, what's a good challenge, what's not very challenging, and why am I doing this? So just again, being very intentional with all of our movements. Begin to close the knee back to the front of the room, kick out your leg long, and then lower it down to the mat. Give your feet a little shake, and then we'll all lower down to the mat in a seated position. Extend your right leg out long, and your left foot will come on the inner thigh of your right leg. Come up onto your sit bones nice and tall here. And then square your chest off over your knee, because when we sit like this, we're kind of tilted. So square your chest off so that you're tracking over top of your leg. And then sitting up nice and tall, begin to walk your hands forward into a seated hamstring stretch. So again, the goal of this is to draw your chest down to your knee, not rounding and doing forehead to knee. Because again, we're trying to protect the low back. So you can reach just for your shin, mat, ankle, foot. You can try doing opposite hand if you're feeling really bendy, or if this is easy for you, if you do have a lot of flexibility in your hamstrings. Inhale to sit back up nice and tall. Switch feet, so left foot comes out long, right foot comes into inner thigh. Sit up nice and tall on your sits bones. Square your chest off so that we're not coming off to the side, but squaring off. And then on an exhale, begin to forward fold, again leading with the chest. So we're trying to close the gap between thigh and top of the tummy. Whereas when we do this, see how there's still all that gap there? But when we draw down chest, that's where we get that same idea as when we do our standing forward fold. So this is basically the same movement, we're just flipping it around. There's a lot of poses in yoga that are essentially just like a snow globe where you can shake it up and it's doing something very similar, or it's basically the same pose, it's just in like an altered version. So Tadasana is basically the same as Shavasana. So that's mountain pose, that's standing pose, and corpse pose. Basically the same shape, you're basically doing the same thing, just one's vertical and one's horizontal. So there's a lot in yoga that does that, and it's pretty cool. And I'll try to show that a little bit more in future classes, just how cool it is that we can do or practice an easier version of a pose so that you can get into a more advanced pose by practicing that easier pose. So again, just stay tuned because we got some fun stuff coming for you. Inhale to come to the tall seated position. Both legs come out long here and make your way all the way down onto your back. Inhale your legs into an upside down tabletop. Arms can come out into a T position or cactus. And then begin to lower your knees down to the right into a twist. You want to make sure that both your shoulder points are firmly on the mat. If your left shoulder is popping up, you can either put a blanket or a pillow underneath it, or rest your hand on your left hip, just to take any pressure out of that pec muscle. And again, it's really beneficial in our twist to come to that belly breathing, that nice deep breathing, as it'll help to open up and release our obliques, the intercostal muscles between our ribs, your abdominal muscles. We're very tight, we tend to really suck in or tense our muscles, our abdominal muscles all day long. And so these twists help to loosen them up, and especially combined with the deep belly breathing to open it up, let the diaphragm move as it was intended to. Inhale to draw your knees back to center. And then exhale, lower down to the opposite side. Again, noticing how maybe this side feels a little bit different. Inhale your knees back to center. Draw them into your chest. Wrap your hands around your knees or the front of your shins. Rock side to side. Massage out your low back. And extend your legs out long. Palms can come down by your sides. Palms facing up. So we come into Shavasana, our final resting pose. Let the body relax. Thanks for joining me for today's Back to the Basics class. If you have any questions, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And I hope that you have a great rest of your day.